Adventures of Willow Energy Transfer. Temperature is the measure of the average kinetic energy of molecules in a substance. In science, we will use Celsius to measure temperature. So on a hotter day, the molecules move faster and will hit the thermometer more, and the thermometer will have a higher reading. Whereas colder water moves less and so won't have as high of a reading compared to warmer air. Kinetic energy is the amount of energy of each particle in a material due to movement. So it's basically energy due to motion. We measure kinetic energy in joules, or a capital J, and is calculated by using the mass and the velocity of an object. The lower the kinetic energy, the lower the motion. The higher the kinetic energy, the faster the motion. On a hot day, the molecules will have a higher kinetic energy versus on a colder day, they will have a lower kinetic energy or less movement. Thermal energy is the total energy of all particles. So the more of a substance you have, the more thermal energy. This is also known as heat energy. So in the example shown, when you heat up a horseshoe, the molecules are going to have more energy compared to a cold horseshoe. We also measure it in joules since thermal energy is energy. Heat is basically thermal energy being transferred to or from an object. We calculate heat by looking at the mass and temperature change of an object. Heat always flows from high temperature to low or from hot to cold. So the molecules from the high temperature or hot object will transfer energy to the cooler or cold object. So when snow melts, the sun is giving energy or transferring energy to the snow to melt it to water. Since heat is energy, we also measure it in joules. All energy is measured in joules, which we use a capital J to represent. Conductors are materials that easily allow thermal energy to transfer through them. An example can be copper wire, but a lot of metals are conductors. Just like our phase change stations, the metal versus plastic blocks, the metal melted the ice faster because it's better at conducting or transferring thermal energy. Insulators are materials that do not conduct thermal energy. So an example could be the Styrofoam cup that we used in a few of our experiments recently. It can also be wool or wood or any other object that doesn't conduct heat. Now we will talk about a few ways thermal energy is transferred. So conduction is when heat is transferred in a solid or from solid to solid. Energy increases little by little until the entire object is the same temperature. So in the example, the heat flows through the rod and then eventually to your hand. Or when Willow sits on me, her warmth or heat energy is being transferred to me, and so I feel warmer. Convection is another way thermal energy is transferred. So convection is when heat is transferred within a fluid, which a fluid is a gas or a liquid. Energy is spread equally by particles with more energy moving throughout. So an example is when you boil water, the energy is continuously flowing through and heating up all the molecules. The last example is radiation. Radiation is heat being transferred indirectly by waves, and energy is spread indirectly by waves. So an example could be the sun spreading thermal energy or giving thermal energy to objects, or if you stand in front of a campfire, the warmth from it spreads out through waves until it finally reaches you, just like this picture of Willow near the campfire.